Yes. We're delighted to introduce our guest speaker, whom you've heard about throughout the whole semester, Tom Bronson. And thank you to Karen for referring him to us. And fortunately, we were able to find a time and day that worked for everything. And it's going to be a great presentation, and then we're going to have some ample time for questions and answers. So Tom has an incredible career. He's an entrepreneur, owner of his restaurants, and he's been, well, I sent you all his information on Blackboard, so I'm hoping you got a chance to look through it. But,
I'm sure that they were riveted by it.
So I'm just going to let him take the stage and go from there. Thank you, John.
Awesome.
Tom.
Well, good morning. I'm excited to be here. I've been following this class, as you know. Pillow talk every night as Karen gets frustrated with assignments, and well, let me see what you're working on. And it's been very exciting. As I just shared with your professor, I didn't even know that this kind of a class is part of the curriculum. This and other marketing classes, and it is so important to build your business. So I titled this presentation, So You Want to Be an Entrepreneur, and every tale is a little different when it comes to entrepreneurs. Every tale has a beginning, and every tale has an end. And so I'm just going to start by telling you a little bit about my story. Although it doesn't apply to what you guys are doing, it kind of gives you a ramp up to the thought process. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about business plans and going out and marketing your business plan and what I would be looking for. So my story in the current company that I'm in, you might call me a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved in over 100 transactions of either buying or selling companies in my career. My career spans longer than all of your lifetimes, except hers. But the current story that I'm involved in today, this chapter in my book, if you will, I bought a small company in 2001. It was called Diamond Touch. We were a point-of-sale product focused on the pizza space. So the touch screens when you go into a restaurant, the waiters and waitresses use that, and all kinds of things like that. When I bought the company, we had really a mediocre product. That looks good, doesn't it? Yes. We had a mediocre product. We had a terrible reputation in the marketplace. We were losing money, had been losing money for 3 years, and the employees were like the island of misfit toys. And I thought, perfect. This is the perfect opportunity for me to go and take my entrepreneurial background and try and do something with this tiny little company. So I bought the company in May of 2001, and we turned our first profit in August 2001. Now think about that. We bought the company on May 25th, and by the end of August, we had turned the first profit for a company that had not been profitable for 3 years. And so I must be the master of the universe, and I'm a genius at doing this, right? Well, unfortunately, for those of you who remember, May of 2001, August of 2001, September of 2001, the Twin Towers fell, and it changed our lives. Business didn't slow down. Business stopped. And we're a small business dependent on selling products and services to the marketplace. We were selling nationwide. I had orders that had been shipped on September 10th that were being refused by the customers and being sent back to us. We were totally dependent on selling new stuff. And money came to a complete stop, turned off the faucet. So I needed to regroup myself and think about how am I going to run this business for now, and how am I going to survive this current setback that I was going through and the rest of the country was going through. And so I started to pull from lessons from my past. Before this company, the company that I spent most of my career with for 16 years, was healthcare distribution. So does anybody know anything about distribution business? It's very thin margins, very razor thin margins, particularly in healthcare. you're operating on sometimes as little as 2 points, sometimes even less. And so it's a matter of managing your costs for distribution, managing your inventory, and managing your cash flow. And if you can do all those things, you can still operate a business on 2 points. And we proved that we could do just that. And so I thought, how do I take that lesson from the past and bring it to this company, which doesn't have anything like that? We're not really selling supplies to hospitals. See, in the healthcare industry, when we sold a contract to a hospital for $1 million a month, and even though we're only making a few tens of thousands of dollars on that $1 million, but I knew that that money was coming every month, $100,000, $100,000, $100,000. So it's a matter of managing my costs, managing our infrastructure, so that we could run a profitable business. But I thought that that revenue was recurring, because I knew that I was going to make that money every month. So how could I take that and transform it into my current business? I knew that recurring revenue was really the smart way to operate a business. That the recurring revenue, if you can get that, everybody understand what recurring revenue is, the definition of that? If you can get recurring revenue, come on in. We're going to be asking you questions about my bio. If I could transform my business into a recurring revenue engine, then I wouldn't have to worry about those things that might happen in the future, because I already encountered the worst thing that I've seen in my career in 9/11. And so our vision became to create a full suite of products around the point of sale. If you think of the point of sale, that computer system that they use to operate the restaurants, think about that as kind of the hub of a wagon wheel. We needed to broaden our product portfolio and start charging on a monthly basis for those kinds of things, so I could build some recurring revenue. So we started partnering, because I didn't have the bandwidth to go out and develop all my own software to do this stuff. So we started partnering with an online ordering company. We started partnering with a marketing company. We partnered with a loyalty company. We partnered with credit card people, so I could get just a slice of that revenue. If the online ordering company was charging $99 a month, they'd give me $30 a month to maintain that relationship with that customer. And so we built out this broad portfolio of products, which does two things. It gives us that recurring revenue, but it also makes those customers stickier. It's important to make your business sticky for your customers, not easy to leave. I knew that if I could bring on a customer on point of sale and get them on online ordering and credit card services and loyalty, that it would be really difficult for them to leave me. I mean, I would really have to piss them off in order to get them to leave, right? So we started relentlessly cross-selling these things into our customer base so that I'd have more revenue and build that stickiness. And then around 2010, we decided to get a little bit more greedy. We wanted all of that revenue. I didn't want a slice anymore. And so we started on a process to go out and buy companies. We bought all of the companies that we partnered with in order to take 100% of that revenue for us. And we've continued to build the company that way. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But when I decided to do that, and I needed to build all this out, and I needed to go and buy those things, I really needed capital, right? I can't do it just on our cash flow. It's hard to buy companies just on cash flow. And so I had to go search for outside capital in order to build the business the way we wanted to. So I know you guys have all done a business plan, but in my opinion, lots of companies out there write these elaborate business plans, hundreds of pages. They're unreadable. There's just too much information. A really great business plan, it's got to touch on a lot of things, but the three most important components, if you want to raise capital, are these. If you just want to operate your business, that's a different need for a business plan. But if you want to raise capital, I think you have to have the following three things. Number one, an executive summary. that's a page, 2 pages tops, that someone can read it very quickly and understand what your business is about and how you plan to make money. Okay, it's important particularly for investors, to understand how you're going to make money. So you've got to have an executive summary. You have to know how much money you need and what you're going to use it for. You know, I talk to people frequently who are, well, we want to raise capital. Well, how much do you need? Well, we don't really know. You know, we'd like somewhere between $1 million and $10 million. Really? So what are you going to do if you got $1 million, and what are you going to do if you got $10 million? What are you going to do if you get $50,000? Even if you're trying to raise $20,000 or $10,000 or $5,000, you need to be able to articulate to those investors what you're going to use their money for, because they want their money to go to work. When we raised capital in 2010 and we raised $35 million, the investors were very specific. I do not want any of the capital that we put in to pay off other investors. We're not buying back stock. So I need to tag along with all of your investors that are currently in the company to make sure that they're okay reinvesting this money so that we can grow the business. And so that added complication to the process. But I had to clearly articulate, here's how much money I needed. By the way, when I raised that $35 million, you know how much I was looking for? $700,000. I was looking for $700,000 in order to transform our business. And my business plan ultimately fell into the hands of somebody who had some knowledge and experience in the space and said, Bronson, I've seen your business plan. I think it's brilliant, but I think you're just too small. You need to think bigger. And so through process of talking with them, they agreed to invest up to $10 million, and then we found other investors to invest $35 million. So you have to articulate what you want to do with that capital. It has to be very clear and concise. And the most important thing an investor is looking for to invest in your business is, how are they going to get a return on that money? Investors don't invest money to be passive. If they want to be passive, they'd go buy a CD. I just heard an ad on the radio on the way up here that is talking about these wonderful returns on these CDs of 1.4%. If you want to be passive with your money, go get your guaranteed 1.4%. Investors want to get a return on their money. And most investors are looking for a 2 to 3x return on their money. So if they invest $1 million, they want $2 to $3 million minimum. If they can get more, well, that's why they're investors, right? So you have to articulate these 3 things. If your business plan, if you're trying to raise capital, and your business plan doesn't contain these 3 things, then you need to go rewrite it. If you're writing a business plan to operate a business and you really don't need capital, that's a whole other matter. But that's not what I'm talking about today. So once you have your well-crafted business plan, the rules for going out and finding capital, really important. Network. Go and talk to people, talk to friends, send your business plan around. I have a hard rule when it comes to networking. I will talk to anybody. If somebody expresses an interest, I will talk to anybody. And so when I started shopping my plan, by the way, this plan that I was looking for, the $700,000, I wrote that plan in 2008. I didn't get funded until 2010. But it wasn't urgent because we were profitable. I didn't need the money. I wanted the money in order to be able to grow the business. So if you're in need or if you're in want, there's 2 different urgencies there, right? So from 2008 until 2010, I would just talk to anybody. People I met, was introduced to, groups. There are lots of networking groups you can get involved in. People at our church who were astute business people. And I wouldn't give it to them saying, hey, would you invest in my company? I would always give them the business plan and say, hey, I've written this business plan. Can I get your thoughts on, am I articulating things correctly? Every time you do that, people will help you. If you say, I'm looking for money, they may or may not even want to read your plan. But if you say, hey, would you read this and see if this is clear? Does this make sense? And I would give it to people, and one of our friends lives in our neighborhood. Said, you know, I read that plan and it's really good. I'm a member of a group that you need to probably come and get involved in. And that conversation over coffee in a Starbucks led to the investors that I had 3 or 4 generations down. That organization, Navigating for Business Success, Business Navigators, I've actually was elected president last night of that organization, so I'll be taking over the helm of the organization next week. It is an organization dedicated to servant leadership, and so giving with no thought of anything in return. And this organization reviews business plans with people that are looking for capital, or that have a serious problem in their business and they need to solve it and they don't have other advisors. We get together groups of people like myself, CEOs, to sit around a round table and talk about whatever their problem is and try to help them solve it and give them suggestions. And so it's a great organization, but find an organization like that that can help you out, because that broadens that network way out for you. When you're looking for investors, there are 2 kinds of investors in the world. You can segment it further, but there are really 2 kinds. There are people with money, and there are people with money and knowledge. Specific knowledge about your industry. Finding people with money is not hard. There's lots of people with money. There's lots of people who have money, who inherited their money, who made a lot of money doing something else. But to find somebody who has money and knowledge, that is key. If they understand your industry and can be helpful and can introduce you to other people who understand the industry, that is super helpful. And that, to me, is a perfect match. And that's what I found with our investors. People who have money and specific knowledge about our industry, so that they can make introductions to other people and it can help kind of grow our network. Be ready at any moment to articulate that strategy, because you never know when you're going to step onto the elevator. You know why they call it an elevator speech, right? Because you have, you know, a couple of floors to articulate that strategy. But be ready to articulate that at any given moment to anybody you run into. And did I mention that you should be networking? Network, network, network. You know, it's about building that base of people. If you looked at my LinkedIn profile, I don't know if you sent that out, but I have a network of probably 3,000 people on LinkedIn. And I do have a hard rule about that. If I don't know the person, I won't accept an invitation. I get probably 10 invitations a week of people I don't know. And because my theory is, it just happened this morning, it's a great demonstration. Somebody that I know, that I've known for years, reached out to me this morning and said, hey, I noticed that you're linked in with this guy. Can you tell me anything about him? Well, yeah, absolutely I can. He happens to be a good friend. You want me to make an introduction? Be happy to do that. So otherwise, if you just willy-nilly go out there and network with people you don't know, they really can't make a referral for you. So if I don't know something about the person, then I won't accept their LinkedIn. Now, when I make presentations like this, if you want, just send me an invitation and know that you were in this presentation, and I will accept your invitation. You guys get a free pass. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of start thinking that this is going to be my job. They start a business because they need a job. But I caution you to think about, particularly in these early stages, as you guys are thinking about building your business. In some cases, this will apply, in others it won't. If you're going to be a private lesson teacher and just a private lesson teacher, which is awesome, Karen's done that for a whole career worth, then this lesson doesn't necessarily apply. But if you're going to start a business, kind of like what Karen's working on now, something that is an ongoing and less maintenance and be it, you know, distributing products and things like that, then you need to begin with the end in mind. Think about this not as a job, even though it's going to pay you, and it is a job. Think about it as an asset, like a house. Like you're buying something of great value. Because then the decision-making process, as you start running your business, I always ask the same question every time my executive team comes up with something new. Is this going to add value to the business, or is this going to take away value from the business? In our world, if you can't articulate the ROI every time you bring a new idea, the return on investment, if you can't clearly articulate what the return on investment is, we don't do it. We won't do anything that we can't already understand at the beginning how I'm going to get a return on it. The joke around the office is that I wouldn't buy toilet paper if I couldn't articulate the ROI. The good news is I can articulate the ROI on toilet paper, and so we do supply toilet paper to our but it's true. We always ask, what's the ROI? Where do I get a return on this? Because we don't spend money on anything. We only invest money. So it's really important to do that. But if you begin with the end in mind, that this is an asset, that this is something that I can sell down the road, then it makes your decision process a lot easier as you start to build your business. And because I've participated in 100 transactions, either as a buyer or a seller, then I know a little bit about this and valuing businesses. You can't believe the number of people that I've talked to in buying companies or selling companies that actually gave no thought to what their exit strategy is. I never get into a business unless I already know what the exit strategy is. Now, the timing may not be exactly what I thought, or things may change, but I always know that there's an end game, and that's what I'm working for. So when you value a small business, if you've got a business that sells some products or you're providing a service, even service providers can sell their business because they can sell their portfolio of customers and products and that kind of thing. I can at least count 57 different ways to value a small business. But I would argue that there's only one valid methodology to valuing a small business. There's a lot of different ways to think about it in terms of multiples of recurring revenue, or multiples of EBITDA, multiples of your earnings, multiples of this. How do you value this business? There's only one real valid method to valuing a small, non-publicly traded business. Publicly traded businesses are easy. You take the number of outstanding shares times the share price. There you go. That's the market cap. In a small business, the only one way is if you have a willing buyer and a willing seller who've agreed on the price. That, my friends, is the value of your small business. And it's easy. A lot of people get caught up in it. I think I've had conversations, many of the conversations that I have are like Shark Tank. I tried to buy a little company in Florida about 3 years ago. I heard that it was in a little financial trouble, that they needed to sell. And I don't care if you're in financial trouble or not. You know, here's how I value the business. And so in my initial conversation with this guy, have you thought about your exit strategy? Well, no, not really. You know, this has been his job for years. Have you thought about what you need? What is your expectation of outcome? Yeah, I need to get about $3 million. Now, this is a business that was doing a little over $500,000 a year and was losing money. And he valued it at $3 million. I would have valued it at just a little under $1 million. Still pay for, you know, a valuable price for it, but I would have valued it at a little under $1 million. I said, so help me understand how you got to your valuation so that I can maybe think about that in terms of applying it to our model of how we buy companies. He said, well, that's what I need. That's what I need to retire. Well, I'm not interested in being altruistic. I'm interested in running a business. And so if that's what you need, and here's what I think the value of your business is, if that's what you need, then I'll give you some free advice. Let me tell you how to get there. And if you get there in the next 2 or 3 years, I'll pay you that for it. And if you don't get there, then my offer still stands if you want to sell it, and then I'll get it there. So I'm totally free with my advice, and that would be my advice to you guys as you market. Be free with your advice. Don't charge for your advice. Give advice to anybody that asks, but know that it's worth exactly what they pay for it, right? Nothing. Only if they use it, maybe. So I articulated to this guy, here's how you get there. If you really want to do that, you need to transform your business in these areas. And if you can get to this amount of revenue, and those are, yeah, I'll pay you $3 million for it. He never did any of that stuff. You know, we never crossed paths again. We probably will at some point in the future. But it feels like Shark Tank sometimes when I'm talking to people because they've never given any thought to how they're going to exit their business. And how, if I need $3 million, how do I get there? How do I value this business? How do I get my business to the point where somebody else thinks it's worth $3 million? Because remember, you have to have a willing buyer and a willing seller who agree on price. So the results for our company, because this is the way we've kind of operated our business with the end in mind, is that Gremory Solutions today looks more like this. These are all of the companies that we've acquired, or the brands that we've introduced over the last 7 years into the marketplace. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? We're in a lot of different businesses. And we serve 3 markets. We are one of the market leaders in point of sale for the pizza business and all the surrounding technologies. We're the #1 provider of technology to the winery marketplace. We've got an office in Napa, California. We are the largest provider of technology to the cart and kiosk business in malls. If you ever go to malls, I don't because I'm allergic to them. But I have a wife and 3 daughters, so occasionally I get stuck going into a mall. But if you do, there's all those little carts and kiosks that are selling tchotchkes and smortulas and hair straighteners, and I don't know what you would do with a hair straightener. But that's our product in there, and we have about 3,500 customers using that product in 38 different countries. We have an office in Tel Aviv, Israel. And we're one of the largest providers to the coffee space. We stick to our knitting. We know what we're good at. We know the markets that we're really good at, and those are the only places that we play. Doesn't mean we won't expand and add another picture here someday, because that's how I got there, is buying these companies that do those things. But that's kind of a picture of where we are. We landed last year on the Dallas 100, which is one of the prestigious lists of the fastest growing companies in North Texas. We were number 10 last year on Tech Titans, Fast Tech. So last year, so we've been really focused on this since 2010 and this growing. And so last year we made those 2 lists. And we've been on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the United States for the last 5 years running. So we're in a very elite group that has had staying power on that list. And so my tale ends right there because we're actually exiting. That's why I struggled to try and find a time to come in and talk. We're supposed to close our transaction next week. Why? Because we started with the end in mind. And now we're exiting this, and I will have a new tale starting on the back end of that. So, all that said, it's a mouthful, and apologize for embellishing on my company, but what are your questions? What can I help you with?
Thank you very much for this presentation.
I'm very passionate about what I do.
This is very
Yes.
exciting.
So it was a private company. Are you selling it to somebody else that will still be privately owned by that person?
We're actually selling it to a publicly traded
Probably.
company now.
Okay. So why, I mean, you're an entrepreneur. With all of your businesses, you have kept them private and you have not personally gone public. Is that because you personally would lose a bunch of money? Why does someone come from private to public? I guess.
Actually,
And at what point?
it's
should
actually
they
to
consider-
make money.
Okay.
And so it really depends on what industry you're in. We've thought about taking the company public, but we don't yet have what we think are kind of the right numbers to get there. We think in this business, you kind of need to be a couple of $100 million in revenue, and we're not close to that yet. And so you think about the size and the breadth, the customer offering, but taking over. But a lot of companies It's really to make money for the owners.
So what would happen if you had gone public too early?
Well, then you could wind up with a stock price that's worthless. You know, when back in 1996, we sold another company to a publicly traded company. It was our distribution business. We sold it to a publicly traded company, and we sold that company on a stock valuation of about $18 a share. And so we converted our shares to their shares. That's how they bought the company. So we wound up with publicly traded stock now as our commodity, because otherwise my investment is in the business, right? It's used as capital to operate the business. And so we got that valuation. When that valuation went up to $22, I sold everything. Sold it all, so I got even a bigger return on my investment. Everybody that I was working with thought that I was a fool. Why are you selling the company short? Why are you taking your money and running? I had a circumstance that required me to have some capital, and so I needed to sell it. I thought 22.5 was a good valuation. I got it. Within the next 30 days, the stock went to $2.50 and never again rose above 10 before it was sold.
Wow.
So, am I a market timing genius? No. But I had a need, actually in this case, it was to get my family to Chicago because I was working in Chicago, they were living in Florida. And I was having a conversation with my father, who passed away about 19 years ago. But as my father could only do with me, he'd say, how you doing up there? I'm doing well, you know. It's kind of a problem, you know, with Karen and the kids down in Florida. And he says, well, why don't you sell your stock, dumbass, and go buy a house? My father uses that a lot with me. Yeah. I still hear it today. Still hear it. So I'm not sure if I danced around, but I think I told you a little bit about publicly traded companies. It's more secure than a private company for sure, but you never know. And if the stock market takes a dive, you just never know. You know, my mom made the worst mistake ever before she passed away a few years ago. When in 2008 the stock market crashed, and she was always a very ultra-conservative investor. She would only invest in CDs and things with low return but guaranteed money, and she spread her money out to different banks because of the FDIC rules of protection and insurance and stuff like that. But over the years, the market seems to be doing well. She put a little more, put a little more, put a little more, until she had almost her entire net worth in the market. And in 2008, when the market crashed on August 26th, the next day she sold everything and lost millions of dollars.
Oh.
And
Did she not consult you first?
We didn't know until she passed away.
Oh.
So, and when we went and I talked to my siblings, I said, it's a good thing that she passed away because she was going to be out of money very soon. So don't overreact to the market. I listen to ESPN because I can't stand to listen to anything else, and so they have on Mondays Overreaction Monday to respond to all the games on the weekend. My caution is don't overreact to whatever's going on in the market, because if the public markets drop, they will come back. And if you pull your money out, you're not going to get the ride back up. So just a caution there.
Right.
What else?
I actually have a question.
You have a question.
Okay, you are such a good public speaker, and I struggle. I struggle with with my elevator pitch, with knowing my audience of how to pitch it to different kind of people and what to say. Can you talk to us about knowing that interaction and knowing how to act and react and pitch it really quick without it sounding like you're just selling them?
Yep, absolutely. So really important. I am an entrepreneur, but I'm a sales guy. I've spent my entire career in sales. And by the way, all of you are in sales, whether you know it or don't know it. And that would be a great course, honestly, for everybody to teach, for in this type of setting, teach people how to sell. Because you have to become really an expert at nonverbal cues to understand where people are. If someone puts their hand to their mouth, you need to understand what that nonverbal cue means. If someone does this, you need to understand. Or if they put their hands in their pocket, all these things are nonverbal cues. When I was in college, before you guys were born, they taught, I took a whole course. My course of study was communications. I took a whole course on nonverbal communication, so you can understand. So you have to be able to pick up on those cues. But think about, so without having to take a course, how do you kind of pick up some things like that? Think about what you do. When you're confused, if you look up and to the left, do you know what that means? Do you ever find yourself doing that? That means that you're confused. Okay, so if you find yourself, think about the things that you do when you're feeling a certain way, and that's how you can kind of pick up from other people, because there's lots of things that nonverbal communication that you can pick up on. If you're starting to lose your audience, back up, back off. Maybe they're not the right person, and maybe kind of end that pitch with, "Hey, can you give me some feedback? Is there anybody else I should be talking to?" or something like that. I get a school in that every time I talk to my employees. I got a group over here in Irving, that's our restaurant group, and I've been with those people for a long time because that was the beginning of our business. But I got a whole group of people that I'm flying out tomorrow morning to go see in California, the wine business group. We're having our annual Christmas party tomorrow night, and so, but I know that they are very different in their personalities from the people that I have here in Irving. And so I'm going to communicate with them a little bit differently tomorrow night. The guys in Miami, they're all 90% of my employees in Miami are Israeli Jews. They were born in Israel, grew up in Israel, and came here as expats in order to work in this industry. They have a whole different cultural bent on how, so I have to communicate with them wholly differently than I do any of the other groups. And so it's kind of assess your audience, and if you feel like you're losing them, you lost them 30 seconds ago. Don't keep pushing. Ask for some feedback. That's probably the best advice I can give.
So we have some questions that students submitted ahead of time in writing, so those diligent students that looked you up and wrote their questions. So I want to make sure I honor that time that they put into submitting them
Sure.
before today's class.
Absolutely.
So Joanna, is Joanna here? Oh, here you go. How many business ideas did you have before you found a successful one?
Oh. You better ask how many unsuccessful businesses have I had, because I've had some of those too. And so, frankly, when I bought this company, I was not looking. I'm not the idea guy, and I recognize that. I'm not the guy that's going to come up with this great new gizmo thing that is going to take the market by storm. That's not my side. I'm more business side, although I am creative. I am a musician. Karen wouldn't call me one, I don't think, but I am. It's a fact, I'm in a rock band. I play keys, and we're recording our first album right now. So I am a musician. And that way, yes, I'm going to use some of this entrepreneurialism to try and figure out how to market that and take it forward. But I'm not the idea guy. I'm very creative when it comes to execution, but I depend on other people. So how many ideas did I wasn't really coming up with ideas, but I looked at a lot of businesses to buy. I knew my criteria that I had. Here's how much capital I had. Here are kind of the things I'm looking for, the value that I'm looking for in the business. And so I looked at everything from a hookah bar to a cigar shop to a franchise business. I knew I wasn't a franchise guy because I don't want somebody else telling me what to do. And I don't operate well in that environment if you recognize your own strengths and weaknesses. But franchise businesses are great for people who need a model, right? And so the idea is, gosh, I'm always looking at stuff, and I consult with a lot of people, and so I'll see something. I've got a guy that I'm consulting with now that you've probably seen their billboards. It's called Door. They have remodeled. They're kind of the Uber of real estate. They have a fixed price model rather than a percentage model. And I think that their business strategy is brilliant. I'm like, God, why didn't I come up with that? I've seen thousands of ideas that I go, oh, why didn't I come up with that? But I've never had that brilliant stroke that when I got into this business, it was because I found something that I could buy at a good value. And I didn't care. Because my business skills are fungible. I could use them anywhere. So it didn't matter what the business was. I just wanted something that I thought might be fun.
So you mentioned that you are an idea guy, which probably means somebody has to fill that position. Starting out, and from your experience, how do you assess who's going to be a good partner and what should you avoid when you're making partnerships with somebody?
That's a great question, because Karen has lived through the downside of some of my bad business partnerships. But I've also had good years and lots of great business partnerships. Understand, if you're going to partner with somebody, that you are getting married. I mean, there's no escaping. I mean, you're going to have that kind of close relationship. And if you don't, or if you can't, and if you feel like maybe I want to have control, then back off from that partnership and go a different direction. Karen and I got into a business together years ago, and we had some trepidation going in because of the partnership arrangement, and it was the partnership that ultimately destroyed our relationship and was the downfall of that business. So it is super important to make sure that just because you're friends, can you really be business partners? Can you talk about things openly and honestly? Can you work through problems together? And so it's the most important thing in partnering. And when you find investors, you're getting partners. And the problem is with investors, you get partners that also have a reason to have a say, and whether or not that say is good, you need to vet that partnership in advance. In my case, I've got one situation where I had my largest investor of 33% of my company, died suddenly in March. And I had a great relationship with him. Cantankerous old cuss, but awesome businessman. Taught me a lot, taught him a lot, but he died very rapidly in March. And now my business partners in that case are his 5 children that really don't have any business acumen at all. And so it's kind of created this very odd dynamic. So you need to be super careful about where you get in business, but you can't also predict things like that, right?
Right. So your most successful partnerships have obviously you grow a more personal relationship, but do you start with people that you're super personally close to? I'm trying to gauge how emotionally separated should you be before you enter into something like this, because you have to be very unemotional about it.
Yes, you have to have very high EQ, emotional intelligence. I don't know why they call it EQ, it should be EI, but I guess because EQ and IQ, but you have to have very high EQ so that you can work through difficult situations without escalating it to something out of control. And so, when you're looking for investors, you're rolling the dice because you don't know these people probably super well. But so long as you agree in principle on the business principles, you need to make sure that you agree. Well, this is what I want to do. Yeah, that's cool, but we should probably look at it a different way. And if that's not then you may be choosing the wrong investor to jump in with there. But it's really difficult. I also have a hard rule. I try never to borrow money from somebody who needs it, because they become irrational. If you needed $100,000 to run your business, and your mom gives you $100,000, that's all she has to live on, and if that business goes south, now you're going to get emotional because you've caused stress. Business is business. It's non-emotional. And so you need to be careful not to borrow money from people who need it, because those people are going to be the worst. They're going to hound you. What's going on? When do I, what are we doing? Did you make those calls? I've got a great relationship with my board. We meet once a quarter. I take a couple of phone calls from them. They're all investors in the business, and that's it. They don't get involved in the day-to-day operation of my business. That's the other thing too. If you have investors that want to be in the business as operators, well, that's kind of a little different thing too, because you need to consider, do I really want to do that, or am I taking this investment and I'll just be reporting to you? And you do have that obligation to report to them. I publish our financials every quarter for our investors. I give them updates, and I send them a long letter of here's what's going on in each one of our businesses, the good and the bad, so that everybody knows. But you have that obligation to an investor to communicate with them about what's going on. We've deployed, you gave me $100,000, we've deployed $50,000 of it doing these things that I told you I was going to do. Here's some of that return that's starting to come in. Here's how we're going to deploy the rest. Sometimes investors will offer money in tranches. Do you guys understand that? So I'll commit $1 million, but I'm only going to give you $100,000 now. Once you reach this milestone, I'll release $200,000. Once you reach this milestone, I'll give you more. So some of our investors have done that in other companies. And we've done that as well, because when we initially wanted to buy those first 5 companies, we only needed X millions of dollars, but they committed for more to make additional acquisitions. So all I needed to do was give them the ROI, here it is, they sign off, deposit the money, off we go. So, what else?
So I have this one from Olivia. Did you develop any of the technology that you sell yourself? There's like 4 questions, so I'll just read everything you can say and answer. Did you develop any of the technology that you sell yourself? How much did you know about this technology that you sell to restaurants before you started selling it? Are you more of a distributor that buys the tech from other companies and then sells it to the restaurants? Or do you have some input in the development of products?
Okay, so I have a degree in product development and programming. It's now, it's now 33 years old and completely useless. So I also have a degree in marketing. Back when we used to, there's these guys that drive around and put paper stuff in a box, postal service. That's what marketing was when I graduated college. Totally useless now. I don't do any development myself, but I understand the principles of development. And so therefore I can talk intelligently about development with our developers. I've got a chief product officer who's responsible for all the development, but she does nothing until I sign off on it. Nothing. And the only way I'll sign off on it is if the rest of my executive team agrees to it. So then we know what the return on investment is. So we set very specific goals. I know what products we're working on for the next 2.5 years. I know exactly what our roadmap looks like. So when customers ask, when are you going to have this, I can answer intelligently. That is not even on our product roadmap. That's something that I hadn't heard before. And if a lot of other customers would like to have that, if we start seeing that, we'll enter it in our notes. And if more customers start asking for it, then we'll develop for it. We don't do custom software for anybody. But also when I'm having conversation with Treasury Wines, the CEO of Treasury flew to the United States from Australia, that's where they're based, to have dinner with me one night. And he wanted to know about what our product roadmap looks like. What are the new innovations that you guys are working on? So I can talk for the next 2 years about here's what we're doing and when we expect it to come out. So from that standpoint, I know what's going on with development. I can speak with them intelligently, but I promise you, they can run circles around me. I have a hard rule every morning when I get out of bed to think about and remember that I am the stupidest guy in the building, because I've surrounded myself with brilliant people who can carry out the things that need to be done. So if I'm the dumbest guy in the building and I've surrounded myself with really brilliant people, who do you think that makes really the smartest person in the building? So, all right, so I answered I don't do any, now, in our business, because it's a technology business, it's really, this is an area where we kind of had some concern because none of our developers were actually stakeholders in the business. So I've got a couple of hundred employees, and the developers didn't have any ownership in the business. So they don't really think about what the outcome is, right? They're just doing a job for which we pay them handsomely. And so we handpicked several of them to offer them some options in the business. So, hey, if we go and it's the conversation, if we carry this stuff out and we make the company worth X, then you get a return on this in addition to what you're already being paid to do your job. And so you kind of get some buy-in with folks like that. So, and I think I didn't answer one of the questions on there.
Are you more of a distributor that buys the tech from other companies
we do all
and
of
then
our,
sells it,
yeah.
or do you have some input in the development?
Yeah, all of our development is done in-house. All of our development is paid, one of our biggest departments across all of our business units is our product development department. And I will tell you, you guys chose poorly. Those people are making lots of money. I mean, lots of, the market went crazy about a year ago. We were budgeting in August last year for this year, and we knew what we would be paying developers, and we're going to add this amount. And I kid you not, between October and January, those prices doubled.
Wow.
I had developers working for me that were making a reasonable salary in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, which means that they were kind of junior level developers with not a lot of experience, being offered jobs at Apple and Microsoft for $175,000 a year.
Wow.
So the market went crazy overnight with us, and so it won't always be that way, but
Did you lose a lot of developers then?
yes, we did.
Then did you have to meet that price level?
We've been very smart in our hiring decisions, and yes, we're paying more than we originally planned to pay, but that means that, okay, we sit down and have a discussion with our management team. Can we do this project with maybe one fewer person where we budgeted 3? Can we do it with 2 but hire higher level people and spread those dollars out so we can afford to do that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then we have to figure out another way to do it.
So here's a question from Katie Rice.
Katie?
Okay. What led you to starting these businesses? What is one piece of advice or tactic that has helped you in your success as an entrepreneur?
What led me to doing this, I can't work for anybody. When the current buyer that's coming in to buy our business had a conversation with me, so what role do you see yourself in? I said, you know what, I'm a terrible employee. I'm not a good employee. We need to think through my succession plan to let's see who's going to be able to run the business. I don't take, well, Karen will tell you, I don't take orders from anyone. Probably the only place I take orders and do it mediocre, I don't do it really well, is from her. But I need to go out there and do my own thing and call my shots, because I get really frustrated when I work for someone, and I have worked for a lot of people. And I've worked for a lot of people that I have a lot of respect for, and I probably could have worked for them for a long time. But I also worked for a lot of people that I consider to be not particularly smart and making really bad decisions. And it just frustrates me to no end to work for somebody who you really think you don't hold in high regard. Those were some of the darkest times in my career. Karen would agree with that. And so that's easy. What was the second question?
What is one piece of advice or tactic that has helped you in your success as an entrepreneur?
Well, the one piece of advice that that I give to salespeople. So in sales, you guys all, you know salespeople, right? Anybody who has a parent that's a salesperson? A couple of you, sort of. A lot of times when you say salespeople, everybody thinks slick, talky, trying to convince people to do things that they don't really want to do. A great salesperson is none of that. A great salesperson is trying to find a solution for somebody's problem. And to me, the greatest, if I asked you before I set this up, what's the most important thing a salesperson needs to be able to do, you would say they need to be able to talk. Well, my advice to you is the greatest salespeople spend maybe 20% of their time talking and 80% of their time listening. And you never learn anything by talking. Everybody else learns if you dominate a conversation, everybody else learns how stupid you are. So my advice to everybody is really pay attention to listening. And it should be, as much as you can, 80% of your conversations. I used to force my salespeople on videotape back in the old days to have a mock interaction where they could not make a comment. The only thing they could do was ask questions. They got one comment for free, and it needed to be a transitional comment if you want to transition the conversation to something else. But otherwise, we would spend 20 minutes in dialogue where I would role play with them. I would play the role of a hospital administrator or a doctor, and they had to carry on a sustained conversation doing nothing but asking questions.
Wow.
Really important. Ask good questions, listen for the answers. When you go to a party and people are being introduced to you, do you remember their names? If you're meeting a lot of people, if you're at a networking event and you're meeting a lot of people, do you remember their names? You probably, are you good with names?
It's gotten worse.
You know why?
Why?
Because you're not listening. Because you're trying to think of, what am I going to say? They're saying something that you're intrigued about, and they're saying something that's spurred of thought, and you're thinking, well, how am I going to be interesting back to them? And you stop listening, and now your mind is in there. You're having this little conversation in your head about what I'm going to say, and all you're hearing is wah, 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 Charlie Brown's teacher. And you can't remember any of that because you're not hearing it. So pay attention and recognize that if you're sitting down with a close friend to have a conversation, do you have to think about what you're going to say next? No. No, it just comes naturally. Well, so it does also if you're meeting somebody new. The conversation will flow, but pay attention, listen.
So Carson, who's been asking great questions, but you did submit some in writing, so I will go ahead and honor those. Karen mentioned in class that you were or are a musician. Were there reasons other than financial that led you to switch directions? That's one of the questions.
That's
Okay.
easy. No.
All right, there you
No,
go.
I started in college actually as an advertising major, but I am a symphonian, so lots of friends that are musicians. I knew early on though that I wanted to make a financial decision. And it's more than that. It was not just, oh, there's the money grubbing, entrepreneur. No, I never wanted music to become a job. I love music. Our home is filled with music. In addition to Karen, we've got 2 daughters that are musicians. I love nothing more than to hear Kelsey playing the trumpet or French horn in Karen's studio, or for Karen to be working through, although every now and then when she's working on something hard, I'm like, do you know anything else? But I love to have music in our home. It's very rare these days, but I'll go sit in, we've got a grand piano, and I'll go sit down at the grand piano and I'll just start playing. And I never wanted music to be a job. I wanted it to be my release. And that's why, actually in my band, 2 of my band members work for me. So that's kind of a weird dynamic, right? And so, but the rule is, when you walk into, we have a rehearsal space, when you walk into the rehearsal space, business stays outside, because this is my release. This is where I can have fun and I can be creative, and I don't want it to be a job.
So I'm gonna jump to her last question, because the second one, he kind of answered already through the.
Yeah.
I would tell you that Bill Gates never stopped learning. Even though he dropped out of college, formal education is important. You need to be able to understand a financial statement, you need to be able to understand and articulate return on investment and things like that, and that's kind of formal education. But I never stop reading. Karen, I'm a voracious reader. I have 25 books, you know, in my queue, waiting to be read, and I can only do so many at a time. And when I get on, I haven't been on an airplane in probably 2 months, but I'm so excited about getting on an airplane tomorrow because I've got a book and I can read, and so I can study. Every morning when I get out of bed, after I make coffee, I make Karen a pot of coffee and I make me a pot of coffee.
Aww.
2 pots of coffee.
There it is.
Well, but there's a reason for it. A couple of years ago, Karen had a little heart issue and she went to the doctor, and then she came also, what did the doctor say? And she said that the doctor said, we have to stop drinking caffeine.
Oh, okay, decaf.
And I said, what? Whoa! What is this weed? You gotta stop drinking caffeine. She goes, I said, let me see if I understand this and restate back to you. See, I'm listening. If you drink regular coffee, you're going to die. Yes. Well, if I drink decaf, I'm going to kill you. And so I get up every morning, I make a pot of coffee for her, and when that's done, I put in and make my pot of coffee, and then the rest of the time I'm sitting at my computer because I've got the overnight news feeds that are coming into my email of all the different businesses that I'm involved in, and things that I'm interested in too. It's not just the businesses that I'm in, and I can pick and choose the articles that I want to read, and I read them every morning.
Sorry, I have another question. I'll just keep asking.
Well, I actually want to fit in one
Okay,
more
alright.
before we're done, so let me just make sure we get this one covered. So, we've gone through all the written questions, but I want to see if you can give us a snapshot of your day as far as time management. How are you able to juggle all of these different businesses? What is the structure you've set for yourself to be able to manage this level of work and different activities that you have?
Sure, that's actually easy. That's something that's evolved over the years. And you know, as our businesses have grown, it was always easy when we're a small business to get together with the people that you need, right? You could just have side conversations with them, going to get a drink of water, and I can stop in and talk to somebody. But as we've grown, we've had the need for more formality in that. So, and because my weeks were just getting out of control. I would be spending time in conversation with people every day. I go in early when I can. I take our daughter to school every morning, or we've got a 15-year-old daughter as well. I take her to school most mornings. And so I don't get into the office until about around 8 o'clock. We don't open until 8:30. But I use that kind of half hour to get organized and try and knock out a couple things that I can. But my days were like at 8:30. I find at 5:30 when we close that I'm still doing the same thing that I was doing at 8:30 because I keep getting interrupted and finding, you know, they're important conversations. So I told all of my direct reports, the people that report directly to me, CFO, Chief Product Officer, you know, head of support, head of sales, all of those things. I said, you get a half hour once a week. We're going to meet on Thursdays. And I start at 8:30 in the morning on Thursdays, and I don't stop until about 2:30 in the afternoon, plow right through lunch. Everybody gets a half hour. I said, if it's super important and urgent, bring it to my attention sooner. But otherwise, keep a list, and I keep a log of every conversation that we have, so that I know, and things that I want to ask them in our half hour together. I always start with this first thing. Tell me what's on your list. What do you want to cover with me today? Because if it takes a whole half hour to cover your list, my list can wait. If we cover your list in 10 minutes, then I'm going to go on to my list and start asking questions. So kind of organizing my day into segments like that. I will tell you that if you looked at my life and really looked at my schedule, you would call me a workaholic, but I would disagree with that, and I think Karen would as well, because the most important thing to me is family. And while I might work late, if I'll go in at 8, I may not come home until 7:30 or 8. But then I want to have family time. I want to be with the family, and I have a relentless ability to separate work and home. Karen sometimes will start asking me questions, and 9 times out of 10, the answer out of my mouth is she says, well, how did it go today? I'm like, I just lived it. I'd rather not talk about it. Let's talk about other things.
Can you share with them that you talked to someone that designates time to think?
Oh, yeah.
Can you please share that?
Oh, yeah, and I actually do that as well. You'll find on my calendar that there's blocks of time that are called think. And that is, I come in with either one objective or no objectives, and it's to think about things that I need to work on in my business rather than in my business. Have you ever heard of Michael Milken? You may or may not have. I think you guys may be too young. He was the junk bond trader that wound up going to prison, but super brilliant guy. And he was evaluating businesses constantly. And I met a guy at the Inc. 5000 conference last year that was actually friends with Michael Milken. He worked for him for a couple of years. And Michael, they would set up these meetings where all these businesses were coming in to pitch their business plan to Michael Milken to see if he would invest in their business. And they were very clear. All right, when Michael comes in, or you're going to make your pitch. Michael may or may not be here when it starts. He will pop in, he'll make his notes, and he'll leave. You are not to address him directly. You're not to ask him any questions. He'll ask you questions if he wants to, but you're pretend like he's not here, because there were other kind of his lieutenants there. And when my friend, who ultimately got a business with Michael, was having his conversation, a rare thing happened. There was a knock on the door. Michael had come in and sat down, he opened his book, he's listening, he's taking notes. And isn't it odd, I'm left-handed and I always do this when because this feels weird. But he's taking notes. And see, things you just, self-awareness.
Yeah.
And someone popped in, and Michael was clearly uptight about an interruption in his schedule. And he said, Mr. Milken, I sincerely apologize, but we have to have an answer on this. Michael pulled his book, flipped his calendar, and he said, I am not scheduled to think again until 3 a.m. on Thursday. I will give you your answer by 5 a.m. I'm not scheduled to think until 3 a.m. on Thursday. That's when he put it on his calendar. This is where he has taken ideas and questions and things, and that's when he can process them. So I adopted that immediately. I put on my calendar.
Not
think.
3 a.m.
Not
Not 3 a.m.
No, I try to get up by, this morning I think I was a little late, 5:40, but I do get up early in the morning. I like to get up at 5 and get my coffee, drink my H2 orange, read my blogs, and go for a run. Although you can't tell it because this is all beer and craft beer. That's what the craft beer industry has done this to me because I love those craft beers. And so, that's schedule time to think. Schedule time to think about your business, not just operate in your business. If you're going to open a restaurant, do you want to be the owner that just stirs the sauce, or do you want to be the owner that keeps expanding their business and thinking? You can't do that unless you think.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of this amazing insight and experience. We just have a couple minutes left, but if anyone has pressing questions, we have a couple.
No, but that was the question actually.
Oh, that was
it?
it?
Time management, so.
I read your mind.
I also love craft beers, but my question would be, wouldn't you agree that coffee, specifically caffeinated coffee, is for closers?
Coffee, yes. Glengarry, Glen Ross.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the other unfortunate thing that Karen has to live with. Every movie I've ever seen, I can flawlessly quote. And I pull these obscure references, and I'll make a reference like that, and look at somebody and go, what's the movie? So, did you know that was Glengarry, Glen Ross?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I've been in sales for about.
That's right. And you know what? The winner, we're having a sales competition. The winner gets a new Cadillac. In second place, steak knives. Third place, you're
You're
fired. Great movie.
Yes, was there ever a time in your career when you wanted to give up, and if so, what kept you going?
You know,
Maybe we went to the zoo.
oh my gosh. That's too long a story.
Yeah, it is
But
too
yeah,
long.
there have been many times in my career, and probably multiple times every week, that I want to give up on things. But it's just, you know, get refocused. If I know that I'm stagnating, then I just change the environment. I'm fortunate enough to have a desk that I push a button and it raises up so that I can stand up and work. And if I'm sitting there and I'm feeling tired and all that, I push a button and my whole desk comes up and I can stand and work at it. You know, and because then I can get my juices flowing. Or if I'm working on something and I know I've plowed through lunch and suddenly I realize it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't had anything to eat, so I go and I leave the building and go and kind of nourish myself. But it's kind of getting a change of venue. Or I'll say, let's go away for a weekend. You know, a couple weekends ago, at the last minute, we said, let's go to California. And so we just went out there and drank some wine and I could clear my head a little bit. But yeah, that's everybody's going to fight that. Everybody in your whole career. If you have anybody who's just like every day is perfect, man, write a book. I'll
What's your favorite thing about what you do, other than paychecks? What is your favorite thing about what
Actually,
you do?
paychecks are probably not the favorite thing, honestly. I mean, other than paychecks, you didn't even have to give that qualifier. I gotta feed my family. I gotta, you know, have money to live on. But as I've said, you know, hey, I do this for free, but don't tell those guys, right? But it's just, I am passionate about what I do, and the favorite thing I do, actually one of my favorite things to do is teach. When I have the opportunity to stand in front of a new class of our sales recruits that are coming in, and I'll block out a couple of days to go and just spend with them and teach, I'd love to do that. And when I can see people's light bulbs go off, once a month I hold an all hands, we call it the GS 360. It's all hands. Everybody in our company comes on. I'm on camera making a presentation to everybody that's remotely, but then to help them understand complex ideas and problems and challenges we're trying to overcome and seeking those ideas. My favorite thing is when I see light bulbs go off and someone goes, oh, I think I can help with that. Because the best ideas come right from the very front lines where our people are doing battle every day, not from my ivory tower.
I'm sure you're seeing plenty of light bulbs in here today, so
I hope
thank
so.
you.
I hope
Thank you
so.
very much. Thank you, Karen, for